What if death wasn't the end? What if a single gunshot in a darkened room made a young outlaw more alive than ever? Billy the Kid may have fallen in Fort Sumner on July 14th, 1881. Or maybe he didn't. The truth has always been debated. But whether he died that night or not, his story has never stopped writing. Billy is one of those rare figures who seem to live multiple lives, one in the dusty reality of 19th century New Mexico, and another in the endless imagination of those who came after. If history is the body, then legend is the soul. And with Billy, the soul simply refused to leave. Tonight, we're not just looking at the outlaw who pulled off daring escapes or the fugitive hunted by Pat Garrett. Tonight, we're following the ghost into books, into songs, into Hollywood, and across oceans. Because Billy the Kid has never been just an outlaw. He's become a mirror of rebellion, of youth, of freedom. And honestly, you've got to admire the irony. Billy couldn't hold a steady job, but he managed to land a career that's lasted a century and a half. Not bad for a skinny kid with a six-shooter. The grave at Fort Sumner became a mystery almost as soon as Billy was put in it. He was supposedly buried the day after Garrett shot, but the details are hazy. Records were sloppy, the weather was rough, and the Pecos River had a habit of flooding. Over the years, headstones were washed away, replaced, stolen, even sold as souvenirs. Tourists later complained they couldn't be sure they were looking at the grave. Some locals whispered the coffin had been moved, or that there had never been a body at all. For skeptics, this uncertainty was fuel. If we can't find the grave, they argued, maybe Billy never really died. That seed of doubt was enough to keep the legend sprouting. For believers, the mess didn't matter, because what mattered was the memory. The kid might have been buried in shifting soil, but his story was rooted in the imagination of the West. Almost immediately after his supposed death, the printers went to work. Dime novels of the late 19th century were like today's viral TikToks, cheap, quick to spread, and not always accurate. Writers painted Billy as a charming rogue, a trickster who outwitted sheriffs, a boy bandit with lightning reflexes. They inflated his kill count, invented shootouts, and rewrote betrayals. The public ate it up. In New York, Boston, and Chicago, factory workers and office clerks could read about Billy's ventures for just a nickel. To them, he was more than an outlaw. He was a character, a symbol of the wild frontier. He was freedom on horseback, the anti-hero of America's restless soul. If reality was dull or unjust, readers could escape into the fantasy of Billy's defiance. These stories were not history, they were entertainment. But for millions, they became the only history that mattered. And once an outlaw becomes entertainment, he's immortal. The 20th century gave Billy a new stage, Hollywood. In 1930, King Vidor's film Billy the Kid presented him as a romantic figure, a boy caught between law and survival. By the 1950s, Paul Newman played him in The Left-Handed Gun, portraying Billy as moody, rebellious, almost like a teenager who just happened to carry pistols. In the 1970s, Chris Christopherson stepped into the role in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, where the story became Shakespearean tragedy, a friendship destroyed by duty and betrayal. Each version reflected its era. Depression era. Billy was tough, but noble. Cold War Billy was misunderstood, a loner against authority. Counterculture. Billy was a symbol of rebellion. By the late 1980s, Emilio Estevez gave us a rock and roll Billy in Young Guns, complete with swagger and one-liners. Hollywood reshaped him again and again, because Billy wasn't just a character, he was a canvas. And let's be honest, Billy probably would have loved the attention. He was vain, he liked to sing, he liked being noticed. If he'd lived in our time, he'd be doing Instagram reels from the Lincoln County Courthouse. POV. You're trying to arrest me, but I've got other plans. Long before Spotify playlists, the story of Billy the Kid was carried in song. Cowboy ballads in the late 1800s turned him into a folk hero, sung around campfires by men who had never seen his face. In the 20th century, Woody Guthrie gave him verses. Bob Dylan went even further, recording an entire soundtrack for Peckinpah's film. Dylan's Knockin' on Heaven's Door, though technically about a dying sheriff, became forever tied to Billy's legend. Music doesn't care about dates or evidence. Music cares about emotion. And Billy's story has plenty of that. Youth, rebellion, betrayal, tragedy. Every guitar string stretched his story further. Even today, his name shows up in country songs, rock tracks, and indie lyrics. Billy has become less of a man and more of a metaphor, a soundbite for youthful defiance. Just when the legend seemed to settle, along came Brushy Bill Roberts. In the late 1940s, Roberts, an old man in Texas, claimed he was Billy the Kid. He told stories only Billy could know, or so he said. He even petitioned the governor for a pardon, arguing Garrett had shot the wrong man. The media went wild. Some believed him. Others dismissed him as a con man or a delusional old cowboy chasing fame. But the controversy sparked a national debate. Could Billy still be alive? Was Garrett's story flawed? Brushy Bill died in 1950, still insisting he was the kid. To this day, Hico, Texas, celebrates him as Billy. Whether he was genuine or not, almost doesn't matter. Because once again, Billy's name was everywhere. The ghost had returned. So why does Billy endure? Because America has always had a complicated relationship with rebels. We admire outlaws who challenge authority, even as we fear them. Billy embodies that tension. To some, he was the last free spirit of the frontier, a symbol of youth refusing to bow. To others, he was a murderer who deserved the rope. Both images are true, and that's why he fascinates. Scholars like Paul Hutton and Robert Utley have described Billy as a cultural Rorschach test. Every generation sees what it needs. In the Great Depression, Billy was a hero against hard times. In the 1960s, he was a rebel against the establishment. Today, he's a pop culture icon, appearing on posters, t-shirts, and even video games. Think about that. A boy born in poverty in the 1850s is still trending in the 2020s. That's staying power. Billy's legend didn't stop at the US border. In Mexico, where many of his allies and hideouts were located, stories of El Chivato, the Kid, became part of local folklore. Some Mexican corridos even praised him as a friend of the poor, an outsider fighting corrupt authorities. In Europe, Western novels translated into German, French, and Spanish made Billy famous abroad. In Germany, Karl May's Western tales boosted fascination with figures like Billy. In Spain, young readers devoured novelas del oeste, with Billy as a character. In Japan, manga and anime occasionally borrow his image as the archetypal outlaw. Billy barely left New Mexico in life, but in death, he traveled the world. It's almost comical. The boy who never saw the Pacific Ocean is now recognized in Tokyo. Why do legends last? Because they answer questions history can't. Billy's legend is simple, but powerful. The young underdog against the system. His life was short. His death was uncertain. His story unfinished. And unfinished stories demand retelling. Billy was relatable. He was young. He was bold. He made mistakes. He laughed in the face of danger. He embodied freedom, and freedom never really dies. That's why people still argue about him, sing about him, and dress like him every Halloween. Today, Billy is an industry. Lincoln, New Mexico, runs festivals. Fort Sumner has a museum. Hiko, Texas, swears he lived there. His face is on t-shirts, mugs, posters, and even hot sauce bottles. Tourism thrives on him. Entire towns make their living off his legend. Scholars roll their eyes, but tourists keep coming. And maybe that's fitting. Billy always blurred the line between fact and fiction. Why shouldn't his afterlife blur the line between history and marketing? So, here we are. From a boy in New York's slums, to a fugitive in New Mexico, to a jailbreak legend, to a ghost haunting songs and films, Billy the Kid has ridden with us through history. Did he really kill 21 men? Did he really die in 1881? Maybe. Maybe not. But the truth almost doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the story, and the way it still makes hearts beat faster a century and a half later. Because sometimes, death isn't the end of a story. Sometimes, it's the beginning of a legend. And Billy the Kid, he'll never stop writing.